In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up an Aruba controller version 6X to work with ClearPass, and what we want to do is set up ClearPass Guest with Mac caching. So I factory reset my controller because I want you to be able to see everything from the very beginning, because I always feel that I watch videos out there and there's something missing, or I read directions and there's just a little bit missing. So this is my controller, factory reset. I'm going to go through full setup. I'm going to take the default name. This is going to be a master. This is going to be my IP address. Find my subnet mask. This is my gateway. I don't want IPv6. US controller. Yes. Put in a password. Put my enable password. And do I want to shut down all ports? No. And yes. So the switch is going to reset itself, so I'll pause the video because it takes a while to boot, and then we'll get back in and start configuring it. It looks like my controller's back up. So let's go in through a web browser. So here's my new defaulted controller. Here's my access point. It's trying to come back up. It was configured on my old controller. So it was in a group. So I'm going to make that group again just to bring the AP in. So I'm going to go to configuration. I'm going to go to AP configuration, make the same group. So the AP will go right back into it. And my AP is still booting up. Once it comes all the way up, my AP is actually plugged into my controller. This is a 7008 controller, so it provides PoE. So I have the AP plugged in. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to make a VLAN for my guest network. So I'm going to add a VLAN. My guest network is going to be VLAN 999. I'm going to put it on my port 1. So I'm going to hit apply. And one thing that you need on your guest network, so like I said, this is 999. You need an IP address for it to work, because ClearPass needs to be able to post back to the controller for the guest network. So let me put an IP on here. And I'll hit apply. So you can see that it is down in the operational state down. So what I need to do to make that come up, I've had this problem before, is I got to go to my port that VLAN's on. And I could have pushed everything, I could have trunked everything out 0, but I just put this guest network going out 1, so VLAN 999. But what you need to do is turn off spanning tree, because I have it on my switch, and it's, if I turn it off here, you'll see that it is now up, my operational state. So let me click save. So it looks like my AP is up. Take a look. Yep, my AP looks up and looks good here. And just re-provision it again just to make sure it's up. Indoor. Yep. This all looks fine. Okay, so we have this set up, and the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go in and create a new campus wireless LAN. And here's my AP group we just created. That's what I put my AP in, so I'm going to make the new wireless LAN in here. So I'm just going to call it my guest. It's tunneled. It's going to go in the VLAN 999. It's a guest network. I want captive portal. So right now this would use the internal captive portal, but I'm going to change that to go to ClearPass. So we just hit next. We'll hit next. And we need to add ClearPass in as an authentication server. So type ClearPass. Put in my IP address of my ClearPass server. I need to put in a shared key. And you click OK, and then next. And this role is created by the controller. So we're going to have to go in and edit this role. So my guest -guest logon, because we want to make sure that this has the capability to speak to the ClearPass server. So we'll click next, and that's it. So that's making my new wireless LAN. So we should see it show up here in a minute in my wireless LANs. So some things we need to do in ClearPass. So let me go back here to Policy Manager. We need to make sure under Network Devices that we have our controller added in. So let me see. This is my controller. So it's in here, but if it wasn't, all we would have to do is click Add. And then you would see this screen. You just put a name in, the IP address, and you just put the shared secret in that we just did back in the controller configuration. That's all you have to do to add the controller in. So the next thing, we can create a new self-registration page. So here's my guest logon. So if you were in regular ClearPass, you could go to your dashboard and you could click on ClearPass Guest, and it would launch this page. I would go to Configuration, Self-Registrations, and we'll make a new one. So let's call this my guest. This name is very important. So this is going to be the page that is in your URL that we are going to go back into. We're going to go back in here into the controller, and we're going to put this in our security authentication, our layer 3 captive portal information. So let's keep moving with ClearPass Guest. So my guest is the name. I'm going to hit Save and Continue. There's only a few things I'm going to change in here. We'll make it a very simple page just to get it working. So again, here's the name, my guest. I'm going to change the skin just to give it a little better look to it. I edited this gallery of skin before. So we're going to hit Save and Continue. Save and Continue. Save and Continue. Just leaving all these things to defaults. And here we have this secure login.arubanetworks.com. Since I factory reset my controller and there's no certificate on there, we can leave this as secure login.arubanetworks.com. Alternatively, I could put in the IP address of my controller. So I'd put in there 192.168.146.7, which is the IP address of my controller. But right now we'll leave that go. So there's only two other things I want to change here. So for right now, let me see. This is all fine. Let me edit this again. I did just want to change the post authentication method. Here it is. So I want to update and mark the user's MAC address as a known endpoint. And pre-auth right now I'm going to do none. So those are my only settings. I missed those before when I was walking through the wizard. So I'm going to hit save. And we can go back and we can take a look at our self-registration page that we just created. So we just made this one. So I'm going to launch it. And that's what our page looks like. And you can see right here, remember we named our page myguest.php. So that name shows up in the URL. So we need to copy that, everything to the left of the question mark. So I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going back here to my controller. And again, I'm on configuration, security, authentication, layer 3 authentication, and then captive portal. I'll click on my guest. And we want to change that role to, I mean, you can either do guest login and edit that, but I'll use the my guest login, my guest -guest login, not the controller create it. So I'm going to set that as my initial role. And down here for the login page, this is what we want to redirect the captive portal to. So this is if we were just using the internal captive portal, but since we're using ClearPass, I'll scroll to the left so you can see everything in here. But this is the URL that we just copied, and that is in here. Now, if you didn't want to use HTTPS, you can check this box here and take the S off. So maybe I'll actually do that, just because I know I'm going to get certificate warnings. So I'm going to hit apply. Right, in a production network, you'd want that to be HTTPS for sure, and uncheck this, and make sure you have your certs on there. So, hitting apply, saving my config, and one thing I know I'm going to have to do, or it's not going to work, is I have to go into my access control, and this my guest logon that is set as our initial role when users come in, I'm going to have to edit it. So let me edit it, and I need to change my login control, and I'm going to allow access to my ClearPass server. So I'm going to do any destination host, and this is my ClearPass server's IP address. Make sure you set the action to permit. By default, it's set the drop, and sometimes I forget to change that. Now you have to hit add, and be very careful. You have to hit done, and then you have to hit apply. Make sure it applies, and then you have to hit save. Okay, I'm going to also do that. So we just did it on our login control. We can go back and we can look, and we can see that it's there with the permit. So we want to also do this on the captive portal, so when we get our redirect at the end, that this all works. So I'm going to do the same thing, host, IP address or of my ClearPass server, permit, add, make sure you hit done, make sure you hit apply, wait for it to apply, and then hit save. All right, so that is all set up, and we should be good to go here. Oh, we need to create the ClearPass service also. So we created the guest page in ClearPass Guest, but we need to create the services in ClearPass. So if I go in the policy manager and I click on configuration, if I click on start here, I'm going to go all the way down to guest authentication with MAC caching. So I'm going to give it the prefix of my guest, just because that's the name of my SSID. I'm going to click next on my guest. I'm going to select my controller. So that's my 7008. I'm going to leave this all defaults. So the defaults are for the time that it takes for my account to expire, which is going to be, for my guest accounts, it's going to be 24 hours. So that's fine. I'm not doing any posture checking on my guest network. And here's my access restrictions. So I can change this to secure login.arubanetworks.com. I'll put 3 devices that people could use with the same guest account to get onto the network. And I'm just going to change this to guest. And I'm going to add the service. Prefix my guest already exists because I had it set up before. So let me go back to general and just say let's change it to 7008, which is my controller, my guest. We'll just click through everything again, and we'll add the service. So you can see that it added 8 enforcement profiles, 2 policies, some role mappings down here, and 2 services. So if I look, my 2 services are down here at the bottom, and we want to reorder them. So let's click on reorder. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm going to move them up here just so it's easier to see. And I'm going to save. And you can see that the services are on because the green dot is on. Now if I wanted to turn the service off, like MAC caching, if I didn't want MAC caching, I just click on the dot, turns it off, but I'll click it on green and leave it there. So I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm going to get my iPad ready that I can screen share it, and you can see the experience when I'm going on my iPad joining the new guest network. Okay, so up on the screen here, I am screen sharing through Bluetooth my iPad screen. So I'm going to go to general, and then I'm going to click on Wi-Fi. So there's a little bit of a lag here, and then I'm going to click on my guest that we just created. And there we go, we get the login page. So let me type on my iPad here. Okay, so I'm going to accept the terms and use, and I'm going to hit register on my iPad, and there it's giving me my account information, although it looks kind of bad up on the screen here. So I'll click login, and now it's redirecting me to the controller. So there's that secure login that we had, arubanetworks.com. So we would not get this error if we had a valid cert on the controller. So then I'll hit continue. Okay, so it tells me that I'm authenticated, and success. So it says I'm logged in. So let's try it on here. Let's just open another page. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Yep, so looks good. So everything's working on my iPad. Now let's go back and take a look at the controller. And if we do monitoring, access tracker, we can see that it worked with right here with the service. So it says this is the service. User authentication with MAC caching. So this is what just worked for our captive portal. So what we can do then, let's take a look at the services. And this is what it hit. User authentication with MAC caching. So next time we come on, we want it to hit this MAC caching and log us in. So what I'm going to do here is disconnect my iPad from the network for now. So I'm going to turn my Wi-Fi off. I'm going to go into my controller and delete it out. So there's my controller. I'm going to disconnect it. I'm going to also highlight it. I'll blacklist it for a second. Okay, I blacklisted it. Now I'm going to go back and remove it. And let's now join my iPad again to the wireless. So Wi-Fi, let's turn it on. Let's click on My Guest. So it's asking me to log in again. So Mac Auth isn't working, so it's not hitting the service. So that's actually expected. So let's take a look here. And the reason is we need to turn on Mac Auth on the SSID. So if we go look at ClearPass, access tracker, it's not hitting the Mac Auth in here. So what we need to do is we need to go back into our controller and we need to go to authentication. We need to go to AAA profiles and click on My Guest and see the Mac Auth here. We need to turn it on under this SSID. Right now it is not on, so I'm going to click New and we can give it a name. Scroll down and hit apply, and I'm leaving everything at the defaults here. So there's no delimiter and I have it as lowercase, so click save. And now we also have to set the Mac auth server group. So if we click on this, right now it's set to internal, but what we want to set it to is our ClearPass. So let me click on here for a second. So we want new, and here's our ClearPasses in here, right? So we're going to add this server. So I can actually get rid of this internal one. I'm going to delete it. So ClearPass, when we set it up, when we initially set up the SSID, we made this ClearPass server. So we need to add that in as the Mac Auth, okay? So now we're just going to go down and hit apply. And now we're going to hit save configuration. And let me disconnect my iPad again. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to turn off my wireless. And let's go back to the controller. Go back to clients. I want to get rid of my client off the network here. So let's purge it out of the controller. So we'll do disconnect, going to blacklist it, and then blacklist it just to make sure it's completely purged out of here. Okay, so now we should be ready to connect again off the iPad, and hopefully this time we'll get some Mac caching going and we'll be able to see it in the controller. So I'm going to click on My Guest, and it shows me that it's connected to My Guest, and we are not getting a pop-up, which looks good. If I go in and let's just click on something in here, and it looks like I'm on the network, so it looks like Mac caching is working. But the way we can confirm it is we go in the ClearPass Policy Manager and we'll go into our Access Tracker, and you can see here that it worked. So this time the service that it triggered was Mac authentication, not the whole guest user authentication with Mac caching. So this is the Mac service, the Mac caching service. See, the names are really close, so it looks a little hard to tell the difference, but this way we know that the Mac caching is working.